What's up guys, this is Scher talking, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk about one of the new formations, Mystic Line. That is actually a pretty good one. It can be used for raids and for boss fights. Not so much for farming because we already have Godspeed stance, but Mystic Line is an interesting formation that gives you both offensive status and defensive status. Well, slot number 1 and 2 have agility increased by 25%, alongside intelligence increased by 25% as well. Slots number 3, 4, and 5 have only intelligence increased by 50%. So, the idea here is that slot number 1 and 2 can actually be support, so that by increasing agility they will go before your damage dealers that will occupy slots number 3, 4, and 5. There's also an additional effect here that reduces damage taken from indirect attacks by 25%. So, in boss fights, this is going to be very useful. In raid boss as well, if you want to take the approach of a long fight. This formation was released to replace Anima's train. That was an old formation where we had 2 slots that increased intelligence and agility by 25%, and 2 slots that will give 50% to intelligence. So it was kind of similar. 2 slots could be buffers or support, and then slots number 3 and 4 were for damage. But here we had some penalties, like Love was decreased by 50% on slot number 3 and 4, and we had Endurance and Love decreased on slots number 1 and 2. So you place these characters into danger by being in the front line. And slot number 5 even had a decreased agility. This would be okay when we were farming with multiple characters, but now we farm with just one, so it is much better to use Mystic Line. It also tries to replace the Magical Shower EX formation that had 2 slots that increased intelligence by 50%, but decreased endurance by 25%. The good thing about this is that you still get weak attack boost by 15% and an increase into action order. Well, this can still be useful if you have a fast attacker, and you can place a Magical Shower and get that 15% extra damage, something that you don't get in your Godspeed stance if you are just using 1 or 2 units. But now when you think about magic squads, you usually bring Mystic Line formation unless you need something else like wheel buffs, so you may still want Rising Phoenix EX or Seer Focus EX, or if you want something else like, for example, Gear Guard Focus that can give you different status buffs and different types of effects. But Mystic Line has an edge because if your enemy is using indirect attacks, you are getting lots of different buffs while having 0 penalty. This is really an awesome formation. But like I said, it's mostly made for mages. So if you can make a full mage squad, this will be nice. Now I'll explain how to best use this formation. Slots number 1 and 2, I'll use support, debuff, or buff. For example, we have this matcha that has this skill called SaGa Magical Train that applies Sundered. That is an effect where you attack the enemy and it applies defense down. So, SaGa Magical Train has to be the first spell that you cast. And then you can use someone, for example, Rock Bouquet, to debuff the enemy with her Lightning of Darkness. It applies attack down and debuffs all status from the enemy. And then you can use your best attackers. In this example, Bertrand. In this case, I also have Joe. And I also have, for example, Aspergal. For plenty of good damage since they are getting 50% intelligence increase. To showcase this in a real case scenario, I will bring them to a raid challenge. Right now we are fighting versus Razan on Conquest, and he uses plenty of indirect attacks, although not all of them. And there are 2 enemies here, so I'm using mages with AoE attacks mostly, save for Rock Bouquet that is debuffing just Razan. So in this fight, we'll see SaGa Magical Train first, and I'll use Lightning of Darkness alongside Twin Goldfish, Ice and Fire Giant Squid, and Lost Flare. I'm using it manually, but on auto it will be the same. Okay, SaGa Magical Train, just like I wanted, so now I can apply Sundered. All my other damage dealers will do more damage. Well, in this case, my Bertrand went before Rock Bouquet because it's not a guarantee that we'll have an order here. Depends on the agility and also on RNG. So Rock Bouquet will actually be used now, yes, before Joe attacked. But Joe will benefit from the debuff applied, and now that she debuffed it, on the second turn the order does not matter as much. We already have the best buffs to our real damage dealers. They are Bertrand, Joe, and Aspergal. But this formation is very useful for raid if you are bringing full mage squads, but it will also be useful for real challenges where you can use similar setups where you want to buff with 2 units or debuff and do damage with other 3. Sometimes you have a character like Muse in your party and she can actually be on the top, and you can also use someone else like Death. Muse Death is a mage that can heal, so benefits from being in a formation like this, either on the front lines or in the back lines, doesn't really matter. Now let's get to another type of utility, a boss fight. This time I'm using some supports in the front line that are a little different, like Maria. She does not benefit from that intelligence buff. She will be using Golden Dragon Dance, that's actually a physical attack, but it doesn't really matter much. As long as she's getting agility, she will probably buff before your other characters. And I have here a Zen that actually benefits from both agility and intelligence. Agility will help him with his martial arts skills, and intelligence will help him when using Merciful Light. And he's also a buffer, so being in the front line helps. And here in the back row I have 3 damage dealers, and I have Rock that can also do both debuff and damage. So they actually work super well. You can also use martial artists in slot number 1 or 2 if you want. For example, martial artists that can buff, like Liza. She has access to that Wave Rush that buffs agility, so it can be used. There are other characters that you can also use, like Mantrarch. Well, Mantrarch can be used in slot number 1 or 2, or Muse, for example, or Witch's Daughter, characters with access to buff skills. Okay, so I am equipping all of my characters versus spears and heat damage because I will be using this formation versus Orlette, a very tough boss challenge that we got recently. Well, I will not be going through the whole fight, I just want to show you how this actually works with your 2 frontal units using support type of buffs. Bertrand is a very defensive attacker, so is Joe, but in this fight it's kinda good to use Headbutt to debuff intelligence of the enemy, and Rock Bouquet will be using Lightning of Darkness, it's a debuff as well. This is a very particular fight where you want to buff and debuff on the same time, and using characters that benefit from wheel buffs to work well in Mystic Line. This also debuffs intelligence from the enemy via Flumanix. Now we are buffing status and recovering a little. Headbutt debuffing intelligence. Lightning of Darkness debuffed a lot of things. When you fight Orlette this way, she actually gets super angry and will try to do LP damage every turn. But it's just okay because I came prepared. I have Maria using Light of the Sun, and I will keep using Rezen with Relief Zone. Bertrand with Frostbite, he buffs when using shadow attacks. Joe can now actually use Glash Array, but not yet. I will use another Headbutt, although she's gonna take lots of damage. Lightning of Darkness here. You see, she just removed the debuffs, and I will have to debuff her again. And she tried to do LP damage in this fight, and we negated because Maria has Evasion Shield. And we got 2 buffs via Rezen. That's actually very nice. We debuffed intelligence, and now we debuff all status. Orlette still has some indirect attacks that are actually physical, old skills. So they will do lots of damage here because I'm not debuffing her dexterity as well, as you can see right now. Verify Blaze is magical, so damage will be very weak. Caster Flame is magical as well. And no one got into critical, but by the way I'm fighting this fight, I'll have to use another one of my heals with Light of the Sun. Relief Zone. I have time to use Tenebrae Glaces. Together with Joe now, I will just use my Glacial Ray finally. And I can still use Lightning of Darkness. So, my damage dealers are doing more damage by being placed in this formation, and they are still receiving less damage because of that indirect damage reduction. Both skills are also indirect, hence why this formation actually works super well versus Orlette. Now Joe won't take damage for 2 turns. I'm still buffing Endurance via Rezen, but it's not that much. And I'm still buffing Endurance via Maria, all status buffs. but it's not as much as I'm buffing other status like will, or how I am debuffing intelligence from the enemy. Some attacks are doing 0 now, huh? 0 was because of Joe, of course. But it's just that we are getting close to 0 anyway. Well, like I said, I will not go through the whole fight since I already have a guide here on my channel. I just wanted to explain how this formation works. So, are you using it? How are you doing? Please say here in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. If you want to support the channel, there are links on the description. And I hope to see you soon in the next one. Bye.